All right, get ready to dive into the awesome world of surfing. We've got a ton of sources to help you improve your surfing no matter what level you're at. Whether you're still dreaming of catching that first wave or you're already shredding like a pro, we've got you covered.
Yeah, and I think you'll be surprised by some of what we found. It's not just about surfing itself. There's a whole lot of knowledge, strategy, and even like a philosophy behind really mastering this sport.
Okay, let's break this down. One of the sources jumped right into the gear, especially the board. They said that the board you choose can totally make or break your session, especially if you're just starting out.
It's true when you think about it. Like imagine trying to learn to skateboard on one of those tiny pro boards. You'd be falling more than you'd be skating. It's the same for surfing.
So what should our listeners take away from this?
Well, the sources said that beginners should go for long boards or those foam top boards. They give you that extra stability like training wheels for surfing. That way you can focus on the basics and get confident faster. Then, as you get better, you can move to a shorter board for more maneuverability.
That's a great point. I've seen so many beginners struggle with boards that are way too advanced for them. Now, let's talk about the pop-up. That's like surfing 101, right? But the source made it sound a lot easier than I thought.
Totally. It's all about that move from lying down to standing up smoothly. The source talked about hand placement, pushing up with your arms, and swinging your feet under you. It's almost like a yoga flow.
I can see that, but I'm not exactly the most graceful person. Any advice for those of us who need a little extra help with coordination?
The source actually recommended practicing on the beach. It might seem a little silly, but getting that muscle memory on solid ground can really help when you're in the water. Plus, it's a good warm-up.
I love that. And I could already picture the looks you'd get from people walking by. They'd probably think you're inventing some new kind of beach yoga.
Exactly. But who cares? You'll be the one laughing when you're popping up on those waves with no problem. It's like anything else. Practice makes perfect. Whether it's surfing, playing an instrument, or learning a new language, that's how you get that smooth, effortless flow.
All right, so we've got the board. We're practicing our pop-up. Now, how do surfers know where to catch a wave? Is it just instinct, or is there a method to it?
It's not magic. It's called reading the waves, and it's definitely something you can learn. You have to understand how waves work. One source talked about finding the peak of the wave. That's where it's about to break, and that's where you want to be.
How do you find that peak? Are there any visual signs?
Definitely. You're looking for a wave that's getting steeper with a smooth face. That means it's about to break. It's kind of like a ramp. You want to catch it right as it starts to curve up. And don't forget about watching other surfers. One of the sources said you can learn a lot from seeing where they are and how they react to the waves.
It's like getting free lessons right there in the water.
Yeah.
So it's a mix of understanding wave physics and learning from more experienced surfers. That makes a lot of sense.
Exactly. But before we get too excited about catching those waves, there's one more super important thing: surf etiquette.
Ah, yes, the unwritten rules of surfing. And it's not just about being polite, it's about safety too,
You
right?
got it. One of the biggest no-nos is dropping in, which basically means cutting someone off on a wave. Imagine someone's paddling for a wave, getting all that speed, and then someone else just swoops in and takes it.
Ouch. I can see how that could cause some serious accidents, especially for someone who's learning. So waiting your turn and being aware of the other surfers around you is crucial.
Exactly. It's all about sharing the waves and respecting each other's space. It's kind of like how we act in any shared space, whether it's the ocean, a park, or even a crowded street. We have to be considerate so everyone can have a good time.
And when it comes to the ocean, there's another level of respect. Respecting the power of nature. Speaking of which, let's talk about safety. Our source really emphasized checking the conditions before even thinking about getting in the water.
Right. You want to know about the swell. That's the size and power of the waves, the tide, which affects the depth and the currents, and any potential hazards like rocks, reefs, or strong currents. It's all about understanding what the ocean is doing that day.
And for beginners, the source recommended sticking to smaller waves and less crowded areas.
It's good advice. If you start in calmer conditions, you can focus on the basics without the pressure of big waves or a lot of other surfers around.
Makes perfect sense. Now, from your experience, are there any other safety tips you'd add? Something that a typical beginner's guide might miss?
I think one thing people forget about is being physically prepared. Surfing takes a lot of strength, endurance, and flexibility.
Yeah, it's not just casually floating around. It must be pretty demanding on your body.
Definitely. So even doing simple exercises like swimming, paddling, or yoga can make a huge difference in how well you surf and how safe you are in the water.
That's a great point. It's like any sport, you have to be prepared, both physically and mentally. Speaking of mental preparation, are there any mental aspects of safety that beginners should keep in mind?
For sure, knowing your limits and not pushing yourself too far and always paying attention to your surroundings are super important for staying safe. The ocean can change quickly, and we always have to respect its power.
It's a constant learning process, getting better at your skills, but also knowing that we can't control everything. It's interesting how one of the sources said that surfing is more of a lifestyle than just a sport, and I'm starting to see why.
That's a great observation, and it's actually a perfect lead-in to the next part of our deep dive. Let's explore that idea of surfing as a lifestyle and why it's so unique and captivating for so many people.
I'm really fascinated by this idea of surfing being more than just a sport. It's so cool how it becomes a part of a surfer's whole life, almost like a philosophy.
It goes way deeper than just riding waves. It's that connection with the ocean, the sense of community, and a whole perspective on life that really hooks people.
One of the sources called it a way of life, and now I'm starting to get it. But what is it about surfing that makes it such an all-encompassing experience?
I think it's a bunch of things. There's something really appealing about the simplicity of it. You strip away all the distractions of everyday life, and you're just there in the moment with the waves. And there's the challenge of like mastering a force of nature, always pushing your limits and learning from your mistakes.
It sounds like there's a lot of mindfulness involved too, being totally focused on the present and connected to what's around you.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Surfing demands your full attention. You've got to be aware of the waves, the currents, the other surfers. You have to be completely immersed in the experience, which is something we could all use more of these days.
Totally. It's like a moving meditation where you're getting a workout, but also being mentally present, finding that balance between challenge and peace.
I like that. And then, of course, there's the community. Surfers have this bond, a kind of mutual respect and understanding that goes beyond just a shared hobby.
Like they have their own language with all the surfing terms and those unwritten rules of etiquette.
Exactly. And that etiquette is a big part of the community. It's all about sharing the waves, giving each other space, and looking out for one another. It creates a really special kind of camaraderie.
You know, reading these sources, I was surprised by how often they describe surfing as a journey of self-discovery. Why is this sport so good for personal growth?
I think it's because of the constant challenge and having to adapt. Every wave is different. Every time you surf, it's a new chance to test your skills and push your boundaries. You're always learning, changing your approach, getting better.
And you're facing your fears too, right? I mean, the ocean is powerful. It takes guts to get out there.
You said it. It's humbling. It forces you to face your limits, your ego, and your fears. The ocean doesn't care about your image. It just is what it is.
It seems like surfing can teach you a lot about resilience, adapting to change, and being okay with the unknown. You're always dealing with changing conditions, unexpected stuff, and the fact that the ocean can be unpredictable.
Exactly. And through that whole process, you learn to trust your instincts, handle new situations, and find that flow state where you're in sync with the energy of the waves.
It's a great metaphor for life, learning to ride the waves of change and uncertainty with grace and courage. So this surfing lifestyle thing is physical, mental, and maybe even spiritual.
Definitely. It's about pushing yourself, connecting with nature, finding your people, and having this outlook on life that values being present, being tough, and respecting the natural world.
This deep dive has given me a whole new respect for surfing and the people who love it. It's clearly more than just a sport. It's a way of life.
I agree. It's a unique world with lessons for everyone, even those who never actually surf.
That's so true. Before we wrap up, what are some key things you think our listeners should take away from today?
I think the biggest thing is that surfing is more accessible than people think. You don't need to be a super athlete or live by the ocean to experience it. There's stuff out there for every skill level and every kind of person, and surfers are usually pretty welcoming to new people.
That's awesome. What would you say to someone who's a little intimidated or not sure about trying it?
Don't let fear stop you. Find a good surf school, start with the basics, and don't worry about messing up. Everyone falls, everyone wipes out. It's part of learning.
Great advice. Find the right support, start small, and enjoy the ride. What are some practical tips people can use to take action on what they learned today?
Well, you can start by checking out surf schools or instructors in your area. Even if you're not near the coast, there might be places to learn on lakes or rivers. You can rent a board before buying one, and the most important thing is to just get out there and give it a shot.
Those are awesome practical tips. Now, before we move on to our final thoughts, I want to touch on something we talked about earlier. Those sources that mention surfing being a lifestyle and not just a sport. We did a great job unpacking that idea. But for you, what parts of surfing, beyond the actual skills, mean the most to you? What does that surfing lifestyle really mean to you personally?
For me, it's that feeling of freedom and connection I get when I'm out on the water. All the stress and distractions just disappear, and I'm totally present riding those waves.
That's beautiful. And that feeling of being free and connected is something so many people are looking for, even if they don't realize it.
It's something we all need, right? We all want that sense of belonging, of being in sync with something bigger than ourselves. And for a lot of surfers, the ocean provides that.
It's like finding your tribe, your community, your place in the world. Well said. I'm so inspired after this deep dive. Surfing is so much more than a sport. It's a way to discover yourself, connect with nature, and experience pure joy and challenge.
I couldn't agree more. And remember, those principles can be applied to other parts of life too. That mindfulness, that connection to nature, that sense of community, those are things we can all work on no matter what we're passionate about.
It's a powerful message to end on. We've learned a lot in this deep dive, from the right board and the pop-up to surf etiquette and that whole surfing lifestyle. But what's the one most important thing you hope our listeners will take away from this conversation?
I hope they walk away feeling like anything is possible and with a newfound appreciation for how powerful nature is. Surfing is an amazing sport, but it's also a metaphor for life. It teaches us to adapt, to overcome challenges, to find joy in the present, and to connect with something bigger than ourselves.
That's perfect. I think that's a great note to end on. We've reached the end of part 2 of our surfing deep dive. Make sure to catch part 3 where we'll wrap things up and give you a challenge to take all this new knowledge and make it your own. All right, we're back for the last part of our surfing deep dive. I don't know about you, but I'm feeling pretty pumped after all that talk about surfing culture and what it all means.
Yeah, it's been quite a ride, right? From the nitty-gritty of picking the right board to how surfing can change your whole outlook on life.
Totally. Let's do a quick recap for our listeners just to bring it all together. We started with the basics, like choosing the right board for your skill level and how important that is, and how mastering the pop-up is like the key to really starting to surf.
Right, and we talked about reading the waves. It's not just luck. It's about understanding how the ocean works and seeing those little hints that tell you when and where to paddle.
And we couldn't forget about surf etiquette. Not just being polite, but respecting everyone's space and keeping everyone safe out there.
Safety was huge, too. Things like checking the conditions before you go out, knowing your limits, and always respecting the power of the ocean.
All of that adds up to that unique surfing lifestyle we talked about. It's so much more than just riding waves. It's connecting with nature, pushing yourself, and finding a place where you belong with other people who love it too.
You know, one thing that really stood out to me in the sources was how surfing can be like a metaphor for dealing with all the ups and downs of life.
Oh, for sure. You're always adjusting to different conditions, riding the good times and the bad, and trying to stay balanced when things get unpredictable, just like with those waves.
Exactly. It teaches you to be tough, patient, and to really focus on the moment. And when you wipe out, which is going to happen, you learn to get back up, shake it off, and try again, even stronger than before.
I love that analogy. It's like all of life's challenges and victories packed into this awesome experience of riding waves.
Yeah, and the things you learn out in the water, those can help you feel more confident and better at handling new situations in other parts of your life too.
So to everyone listening, whether you're a pro surfer or just thinking about trying it out, we hope this deep dive has given you some useful tips and maybe even got you fired up about surfing.
Remember, it's all about the journey. Enjoy those little wins, learn from when you fall, and most importantly, have fun out there.
Yeah, get out there, catch some waves, and feel that amazing connection with the ocean.
And here's something to think about. We've talked about the surfing lifestyle a lot, but what does that actually mean to you? What parts of surfing really speak to you on a deeper level? What inspiration can you take from this deep dive and use it in your own life, even if you never actually surf? Maybe it's that feeling of freedom, or maybe it's pushing yourself to do something challenging, or maybe it's about being present in the moment, or maybe it's about connecting with a group of people who love the same things you do. Whatever it is, we hope you explore those feelings and see how they can make your own life richer.
Well said. Thanks for joining us on this incredible journey into the world of surfing. Until next time, stay curious, keep exploring, and ride those waves of life with confidence and joy.